This is not a video I should be making. You see, if I was smart, I'd be creating a thumbnail right now with the developer of GT7 swimming in a pile of riches with some outrageous tagline hinting that GT7 is just some huge cash grab. I would paint myself as some kind of white knight informing you, the innocent gamers, of the dangers of such a terrible game and company. That is the money play right now for big views, play up the drama and take full advantage of that fanboy rage. It would be genius. I get that sweet YouTube click money in the most cynical way possible, while you the viewer sees me as the good guy. It's the road to YouTube success right there. But that isn't what Formula Digital is about. It's not what I'm about. This is a departure from my usual video style on the channel to have a little chat just about the state of play because things are getting just a little bit out of control. GT7 on Metacritic is down to a user review score of just 2. I've rarely seen more hate for a game in my life. Which is confusing because when I play the game, it's been quite enjoyable. So what exactly is all the fuss about? It all came about after this, patch 1.07, specifically 0.6. In-game credit payouts were adjusted, as they called it. It turned out that adjusted meant half payouts for most events. To me that didn't mean much. I still have a lot of the game left to complete. Sport mode is infinite and I have ample credits to have fun in both, so what do I care? But to the internet, this was fire. No sustainable way to play the game if you want to drive a large variety of cars. Don't want to continue the grind. I just want to drive different cars. The game is predatory and gamers are being taken advantage of. It's a money grab. That's just the tip of the iceberg. So how can these opinions and my own experience be so different? I think the difference is one of expectation. I expected to be playing a game like GT7 for years. Previous GT games had very expensive cars too, and I never experienced them till years after the launch of the game. When I did, it felt like a special reward at the end of a really long career. But for others, attaining those cars is not a reward for significant time spent in the game, it's an expectation going in. They bought the game, so they have the right to drive all the cars in the game. They feel that making the cars so expensive and the credit payouts so small that the developers are trying to force them to buy credits with their hard-earned money when they've already paid a significant amount of cash for the game. That seems logical, right? But is it really true? After all, it's easy to be skeptical. The same claims were made for GT6, and again for GT Sport. Is this time really any different? Yes and no. It's complicated. You see, expensive cars have always been a thing in Gran Turismo. It's part of the grind that so many players said was missing from GT Sport. The difference is that back in the day there were things like the rubber band trick, where you rigged up the controller to literally play the game for you, racking up credits while you did something actually enjoyable. The same goes for the B-Spec mode in GT6. The AI played the game for you, earning all those credits so you didn't have to. GT7 has none of those things, but it still gave you the ability to spend countless hours lapping the same circuit over and over again for credits if you wanted to. And then you could brag about how boring your life is on Reddit. Come at me, Mysic. But then of course that update dropped. Those 20 million credit cars that might have taken a full 12-hour day of grinding to attain before the update would now take over 2 days, and that seems to be the tipping point between possible to grind and obvious push to microtransactions, at least judging by the community reaction. But was pushing users towards microtransactions really the point of the update? Kazunori Yamauchi released a statement to clarify the issue, which went over like a Led Zeppelin. In his statement, and remembering that English is not his native language, he says that, "In GT7 I would like to have users enjoy lots of cars and races even without microtransactions. At the same time, the pricing of cars is an important element that conveys their value and rarity, so I do think it's important for it to be linked with the real-world prices. I want to make GT7 a game in which you can enjoy a variety of cars, lots of different ways, and if possible, would like to try to avoid a situation where a player must mechanically keep replaying certain events over and over again." This statement is key and reflects the developer vision for Gran Turismo 7. That is, to appease all the fans who demanded the return of the traditional single-player campaign, but more importantly, to educate on and celebrate car culture. Not just game car culture, but real car culture. Everything about this game has a push for more realism and understanding of everything that car culture embodies. Kazunori wants players to appreciate each car and every part they place on it. They are not meant to be commodities. He wants rare cars to be rare and parts to cost what they cost. He's even gone as far as partnering with a real-world evaluation company to set realistic prices in-game. And this extends to things like the often criticized tire prices, which are held up as an example of excessive pricing to force users into microtransactions. But when racing slicks for a season of GT3 racing cost as much as 58,000 euros in real life, that argument kinda falls apart. But players aren't really arguing that the prices are too high. The real argument is that the payouts are too low. PD slashed payouts in this update. This must be to force microtransactions on everybody, right? Let's calm down and think about what happened from the developer's perspective. You make a game with the intention of guiding players to experience a range of cars, not just collecting them, but experiencing them. You have the cafe force players to try new cars, force players to own a range of different cars, all the while drip feeding in new tracks and having them race on them. You have deliberately sculpted an experience as best as you know how to see players experiencing as many different cars on as many different tracks as you possibly can. Then you release it to the public and what happens? Sure, most players are playing as intended, but some are not experiencing the automotive world as you intended. They are doing endless laps in the same car on the same track. It's terrible, it's not what you wanted. There is a reason you crafted all those other tracks and cars, but these players aren't even using them. So what do? This is where the developers have made a mistake, and I believe it is a mistake, not some calculated corporate chess move. To fix the issue, they had two choices. Option A, nerf payouts on the events that were being grinded for, or option B, lower credit requirements for everything else and raise payouts for the other events. Of course, we all know option A was taken. It was the wrong option for sure, but the point I want to press is that I don't believe this was some sort of evil strategy to force players into buying credits. It's a very delicate balancing act trying to make something rare in a game, but also have it attainable to average players. If part of the experience of your design requires some things to be rare, then what do? Credits are very difficult to get right, as we have seen. If you make the car winnable through some event, then it needs to be very difficult in order to keep the car rare, which means players of just average skill are never going to experience the car. You are going for rare, not elitist. You also can't involve any aspect of chance because then again you run into the issue that most players will never have the opportunity to experience the car. Polyphony Digital are developers who have a very long history of incredible free support for their games. 45 cars were added to GT6 after launch. This was upped to over 160 cars added to GT Sport after launch, all for free. And that's not mentioning the free tracks and game modes. And let's not forget GT5 Prologue. The game launched at a budget price, but through the Spec 2 and Spec 3 updates, became a huge value proposition. Can anyone name any other developer in any genre that has been more generous with content than Polyphony Digital? Maybe they're out there, but I cannot name them. This is not the history of a money-grabbing company. The hate generated, the calls for refunds and the review bombing. It all seems massively out of proportion when there is an innocent explanation that makes sense. Not to mention the fact that there hasn't even been time for the developers to address criticism of the change yet. The always online aspect of the game is deserving of criticism, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there has been a conspiracy from day one to convert Gran Turismo into some microtransaction cash cow. But given the developer's history, in the absence of evidence, we all need to just calm down and lower the temperature just a bit. By all means, get your pitchforks ready. But in case you're wrong and PD isn't the anti-consumer devil, let's not burn them at the stake just yet.